welcome back to Just Another Stitch. For those that don't know me, my name is Connie, and if you're new to my channel, I'd like to welcome you. Today, I'm going to show you how to knit in the round using circular needles. And I'm using 5mm short needles for this tutorial, and I'm using my 9-inch circular. And I'm just showing you on this tutorial the concept of knitting in the round. But depending on the project you're doing and the pattern, some of these things you'll do according to what the pattern tells you. But I'm using number 4 weighted yarn, and like I said, you'll need your circular knitting needles, and you will need a stitch marker. Basically any type of stitch marker. It doesn't have to look like mine. Okay? And in this tutorial, I'm going to expect that you already know how to do your cast on and how to do the knit stitch. If you don't know how to do these things, I do have tutorials that show you how in my knitting tutorial playlist. But so I have casted on 70 stitches on my circular needles. Okay, and one thing I like to do when I cast on to circular needles, notice how I have an end cap right here. That way my stitches won't fall off on the end. Okay, but I'm going to remove that now. Okay, so, and another thing, whenever you go to knit in the round, you want all your stitches facing the inside. You do not want your stitches twisted like that. Because what will happen is when you connect in the round, your project will be twisted. And I've had it happen to me before. So make sure that your stitches all face the inside like this. And as you knit, make sure that they stay facing inside, because sometimes they'll try to start twisting up on you. And really, the only real thing different is how you get it to connect. So what you do is you go into that first stitch to knit it, okay? And in this tutorial, I am only going to be doing the knit stitch around. Where with hats, a lot of times you do hats a lot using knitting in the round. And with hats, a lot of times you'll do brim stitches where you alternate between knits and purls. But to keep things simple, I'm just gonna do knit stitches for this tutorial. Okay, so now you're ready to start knitting in the round. And basically, you start your first stitch like you normally would when you're doing a knit stitch. Okay? And the only difference is, okay, on that first stitch when you're joining in the round, you're going to grab your yarn that connects to your skein of yarn and your beginning tail from when you started casting on, the loose strand. So you want both of those. And you're doing a knit stitch, but you just have 2 strands of yarn that you're using when you go over your right needle, like that. Okay? And you want to try to keep it all nice and tight, and you just continue on with the knit stitch, okay? And as you see, you have basically 2 loops right here. And that's your very first stitch when you're knitting in the round. And what you want to do is you want to place your stitch marker to go through both those loops that you just formed from your first stitch. This will mark where your first stitch is, and this will be important when you get to the end of the row when you start your next row. And at this point, you're just going to continue doing knit stitches, but you're not going to use your cast on tail anymore. You're going to just use your normal one strand, okay, and you just do your knitting, okay? So we're gonna meet up back up when you get to when you get to your last stitch in the round, right before you get to where your stitch marker is. So go knit all the way around, and we're gonna meet back up there. Okay, so I knitted all the way around right before the stitch marker. And now what you want to do is your tail strand, you want to pull that tight to make sure you don't have any slack. Okay? And you see where your stitch marker is with the 2 loops? You're going to take that stitch marker out, and you're going to place it now on your right needle. And that's lets you know that that's where the new round starts, okay? And you're going to go in through both those loops, okay? You're going to do your yarn over and pull through both, okay? So now it looks like a regular stitch. Pull up some slack, okay? And also I want to point out, you notice how all the stitches face the inside. You want to keep making sure that way your stitches do not get twisted, okay? Because you do not want your work to get twisted on you, okay? And you just keep continuing to do the knit stitch, okay? That's all you're doing. And one thing too I want to point out, when you knit in the round and you're doing all knit stitches, that will be the stockinette stitch. Where when you're knitting flat, if you did all knit stitches front and back row, that would be the garter stitch. But when you knit in the round, it's a little different. Because knitting flat, to do the stockinette stitch, you would knit the front row, purl the back. But in the round, it's just knit stitches to get the stockinette stitch. So I wanted to point that out to you. That's one thing that's a little different. But now all you're doing, you just keep going around. When you reach the stitch marker, you just slide the stitch marker across and just keep on knitting. And that's all there is to knitting in the round. Okay, so I am fixing to complete my next row. Okay, I just did the last stitch, and you just slip that stitch marker over, okay, and you just continue knitting your next round. And like I said, you just keep going around like this. And that is how you knit in the round.